Hello, everyone. I'm Sonakshi Kapoor. I'm an attorney at DLA Piper's Litigation and Regulatory Practice. I'm also the California Young Lawyers Association liaison for the Real Property Law section of California Lawyers Association. Welcome to our panel discussion today on the topic Navigating the Legal Career for Young Lawyers. This webinar is organized in collaboration with both CYLA and RPLS. I'm joined today by a star cast of speakers who are all ex-com members of the Real Property Law section. We have today Jonathan Golding, Nancy Goldstein, Ashley Peterson, and Franz Fero. Our speakers today bring a multidisciplinary background and extensive knowledge and experience in the legal profession in California. We will be taking questions at the end of this webinar, so please feel free to leave your questions in the comment section, the message section. Before we begin with the webinar, we will have a brief introduction from our speakers and hear from them about who they are and what they do. Nancy, if I may request you to chime in first.
Certainly. Hi, my name is Nancy Goldstein. My office is located in Westlake Village, which is halfway between downtown Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. I've been practicing in the area of real property and contracts for 37 years, and the emphasis of my practice at this time is on easements and access rights. I'll be going a little more in depth when we talk about the topics later, so I'll let the next person go.
Thanks, Nancy. We also have Franz Fero with us, and I'll let him introduce himself and his work.
Hi, everyone. My name is Franz Fero. I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for 6-7 years now. I am also licensed as a real estate broker. I think one of the things that I bring to this conversation is you don't have to become a lawyer by being a humanities major and then afterwards going to law school. I actually got a degree in neuroscience. I thought I wanted to become a doctor. I went to med school and then I didn't like that. And then I decided I would go to law school, and that has been something that I really enjoy doing. So I can bring a perspective of what happens when you decide that you want to change careers or do something different with your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley, can I please request you to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, thanks Sonakshi for having us today. We're really excited to be here, and welcome to everyone. We're so thrilled. My name is Ashley Peterson. I am a real estate transactional attorney in San Diego, California. So I don't do any litigation. I only deal in purchases and sales, commercial and residential side, leasing issues, landlord-tenant stuff, title issues, and 1031 exchanges and things along those lines. And the irony is that contracts was the one class that I failed in law school. So here I am doing contract law. So it doesn't correlate to what you end up doing in your career. So don't worry.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Jonathan, you're the last one.
Okay. And Ashley, thank you for that honesty. Sonakshi, thank you for putting this together. This is really excellent. So I am a real estate and construction litigator in Los Angeles. I've been practicing for 30 years, and I've had a lot of different experiences working in small law firms, big law firms, medium-sized law firm, and now my own law firm. So I've kind of run the gamut. I don't think I'm, unlike Franz, I don't think I'm qualified to do anything but practice law. So I've been doing that and enjoying it for 30 years. And I think I've got some good perspectives on how people can fulfill their expectations with their careers and enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you to our speakers for joining us today and kickstarting this panel with some insights about how you got here. And there will of course be more as we have our conversations. The focus of this panel discussion, of course, is to bring light to issues that most young attorneys are experiencing or have concerns about. The legal profession is unique in the sense that it is one of the oldest professions and has been carried forward by yesteryear lawyers and will continue with tomorrow's legal minds. So there's also the sense of legacy and following the traditional path, which many young attorneys struggle to adopt in their lives. And by young, I mean new, not defined by age. Often within the legal community, we do not find spaces to offer our vulnerabilities, discuss our doubts, and share our challenges. I hope through this discussion, the audience can hear your stories, your motivations, your experiences, both good and bad, and little nuggets of lessons honed over years of practice. So as we begin our conversation with this thought in mind, Nancy, can I perhaps start this conversation with a question to you? What is an important experience you had as a new lawyer? Any specific moments of triumph or challenges that you faced?
Well, like I indicated in my introduction, I have a very different perspective. I didn't know, I think Franz may have beat me, but in college, I was a chemistry major and I had a minor in computers. Hard to recognize that now. I graduated as an analytical chemist, and my first job out of college was as an analytical chemist for the Environmental Protection Agency. And then I went on to become a federal investigator for the FDA. So when I decided to go to law school, that's a whole nother long story we won't go into today, I was kind of anxious to get out there. And I graduated after 2.5 years. And then I got out and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I had interviewed with a lot of large firms who were interested in my chemistry background, and that didn't pan out. So I ended up taking a job with an elderly, older than me now, practitioner in Beverly Hills, who needed someone to basically take over his entire practice. And he trained me, which gave me some really valuable experiences. Now, I have to tell you, that's good and bad. But I have to tell you, the one thing that I really took from it is a lot of times when you're first practicing, it's very hard to go from what you learn in school to how you actually do things in the real world. And he gave that to me. I got one of the most memorable experiences I had is I got to handle an entire appeal in my first year of practice, which is very unusual. I got to write the briefs. I got to argue it. I actually got to win. So it was even more memorable. I learned how to do a lot of things, and I found it was odd. I was 100% litigator at the time. I wanted to be in court. I wanted to, handle cases. And this was a way I would be in line in the courtroom waiting for something. And I'd have someone who had a much nicer suit than myself come up to me and say, well, how do you know how to do that? My legal assistant usually does that. I don't know. And I know how to do things. So that was a very interesting experience for me. And I've carried it forward into my practice.
Yeah, Nancy, that was great. Just to give a little more context, how old were you when you started started practicing law? Sorry if that's something.
No, that's okay. I was 5 years behind the rest of my class. I had been working for 5 years because I'm practicing 37 years now in law. So I couldn't be that much further behind. So I don't know. I was 30. I was 30.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you think that's been something that was a challenge over the years? Did you feel like starting late was a challenge of sorts, or it didn't matter in the end?
It was a challenge in law school.
Okay.
Because when I showed up on my first, I went to the University of San Diego. My first day of classes, I showed up in my suit, sitting next to the girl with the beach shorts. So yeah, there were challenges, but as you can see, I've made it this far, so they're all surmountable.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing, and thank you for sharing that little personal experience that you had as you were figuring out the ropes as an appellate lawyer. And Franz, I think we would love to hear from you about your experiences and actually both. I want to know both good and bad, and the challenges you faced, and how do you feel about it now?
So, one of the things that is true of me when I became a lawyer was I never really thought like I would apply to a job and apply to firms or any of that sort of thing. So I wanted to go to law school because I just wanted to learn what it was like to think like a lawyer, because I was like, hey, look at all those people in Congress, look at all those senators, like everybody who's making the rules is a lawyer. So maybe I should understand the rules in order to kind of just function in our society. And so that's why I went to law school. And so I graduated from law school. I got that, which is great. And then I was like, what do I do? And so the first thing that I did was I joined the San Diego County Bar Association because I was like, I'll hang out with lawyers and maybe one of these lawyers will get me a job. That did not happen. But what did happen was I ended up being on the small claims panel for the San Diego County Bar Association. And the only reason I ended up on that panel is because it was the only panel that did not require any experience. They're just like, you want to be on the small claims panel? You can be on the small claims panel. So I did. And I will say that that is probably the single most invaluable experience I have ever had as an attorney. Because what ended up happening is that I got real clients, like real people, who came to me with these problems as a lawyer, and they expected me to solve them as a lawyer. And one of the things that I really learned is that when you're talking to clients, or when I am talking to clients, they want practical solutions to their problems. They do not want me to be a lawyer and talk like a lawyer and tell them all of these legal ins and outs. They want a practical solution. So, so after having that experience, I learned two things. The first thing I learned is how to talk to clients. You know, just how do I talk to a client? How does a client come to me, have a problem, and then I tell them, hey, you know, this is kind of how you should deal with this problem legally. And the second thing that I learned doing small claims consulting is that people came to me with literally any problem that they thought could potentially be a legal problem. And what that taught me was how to very quickly look up the law, figure out what the law is, and give them some sort of practical solution without having to do a whole lot of research or work or, you know, thinking about it, but just really like, what is the law basically? Like, where do you stand here? And I got really good at doing that. And that makes me, you know, not just a good lawyer, but also just a really good problem solver. So when people come to me now, whether I'm a you know, real estate broker or I'm acting as a lawyer or whatever, I really am able to say, okay, here's your problem, here's what the rules are about your problem, and here's a really practical solution to this problem without having to like give tons of billable hours or waste a bunch of time or give them a lot of anxiety over when am I going to get an answer.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, it's a wonderful piece of advice about how to bring together, you know, to be able to understand your client's problem and to provide quick and easy solutions. Often clients do not want their attorney to spend, you know, hours of work at the time of the prelim conversation. So it's always this tightrope to walk. But it's great that, you know, if you can offer some quick solution initially, that goes a long way to have long-term clients. And
can I jump in? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, can I jump in?
I was going to actually ask you, Ashley. So it's great that you jumped in.
Perfect. Okay. So I think probably one of the biggest successes from being a new attorney. So I am 9 years in practice this year, and I am 6 years as a solo attorney. So I would say one of the biggest successes that I had, and I would echo what Franz said, which is getting involved in the local bar associations or like the California Lawyers Association. I mean, those for me have been one of the most beneficial things in my career for networking, for making connections with people that might do different types of law than I do. Like, for example, Jonathan does litigation and construction stuff, and I don't do any of that. So having that network of attorneys who are more experienced than me, who I can turn to for advice, for mentorship, has been invaluable. I can't tell you how many lunches, coffees, networking events I went to as a new lawyer, and I cannot stress enough how important that was in my career, because now people know my name in the legal community, people trust me, they respect me, and that's based on these relationships that I've built throughout the early parts of my career. So that would definitely be one of the successes as a new lawyer. I think one of the trials and tribulations of a new lawyer is adapting to what your managing partner or boss wants from you for work product. I think that I struggled with that for the first couple of years of my practice. I started out doing some litigation work, and I realized that that wasn't really what I wanted to be doing. Mm-hmm. And so I switched and worked at another small firm that did like transactional work, and just it was such a stark contrast between what the first firm wanted, what the second firm wanted, and I just had a hard time adapting to really try to get what they wanted, because I think there just really wasn't a very good instilled sense of mentorship that these attorneys had, because I think they were so far removed from being a new lawyer that they had forgotten what it's like to have to learn this stuff from scratch, you know? Yeah. So I felt like that was one of the biggest struggles for me, and also one of the reasons that led me to opening my own practice and going solo.
Yeah, that's very good to hear. I think just figuring out what you are good at doing and what kind of work product you are comfortable producing is definitely a challenge, and that requires, I think, years of practice and getting to know yourself as a lawyer. It's also a journey of self-discovery. I totally believe that. Jonathan, definitely we want to hear from you about your personal experiences as a young lawyer.
Sure. So first I want to agree with Ashley on pretty much everything she said. I think it's really important for new lawyers, junior lawyers, about first 5 years of practice, let's say, to figure out what they like doing and what they're good at and what they want to do. You know, people ask me why I've been a litigator for 30 years. A lot of litigators change and they become transactional lawyers after a while. And I always say the same thing, which is, as a lawyer, I don't want to play unless I can win. For me, it's about winning. And I view every case as a challenge, and it's just the way I'm wired. You know, sitting, counting out the contracts isn't for me. I wouldn't do it. I'd go do something else probably. So fortunately, there are lawyers like Ashley who like doing that. And different people have different skill sets and they like different things. And that's a road to discovery as a junior lawyer when you're trying to understand what is it I really want to do and what am I good at. The other thing that Ashley said, which I think is really important, is learning how to develop business. Networking, you can't start too early at that, making those contacts that later could be good referral sources. I worked in law firms for 24 of my 30 years. You know, I've worked in big firms, small firms, medium-sized firms, now my own firm. And the one thing that a lawyer told me as a junior lawyer that I thought was really helpful, important, is the only real security a lawyer has is to have their own client. And so developing clients is something that takes years and lots of skills unless you're already well connected. And I think that's very important. And the other thing that people have said that I think really is true, and I've been on both sides of it now, both the junior lawyer writing briefs for other people and the senior lawyer having people write me briefs, is it's very important to work with somebody that you feel connected to as a partner, and that you can understand their writing skills and styles, and you can give them something that sounds like them as opposed to sounds like you. You know, it's very important as a junior lawyer to understand that ultimately someone's got to make the decision on what the document that goes out looks like, and that's going to be the most senior person on the case.
Yep. Those are some great insights, Jonathan. And I think just stemming from this conversation, what I think the audience would definitely like to know more about is the business of the legal profession. We've talked about some core skills we need to, figure out and the work products we need to figure out that we can produce, but also what is the business of running a solo practice, or even if it's a bigger law firm. At the end of the day, there are some decisions that have to be made in terms of what clients you're taking, kind of communications you're having, business development, building practices. So, Franz, do you want to share some insights from your, from your experience of running the business of a law firm or your solo practice?
Sure, I can provide some insights. So one of the things that I will say is, since I'm also a real estate broker, a lot of my business is sort of business development and getting clients and people who want to buy and sell houses and stuff like that. And, one of the best insights I ever got in terms of being a real estate broker was actually from a lawyer, not from another real estate broker, which is that you have transactions or cases and you have clients, and they are not the same thing. A client, a transaction or a case is, my client comes to me and says, I have this case, please, work up this case. And then afterwards you get a verdict and it's over. Or in my case, a client is, somebody who says, Franz, I want to sell my house, and they call me, and, I sell their house, and they get a bunch of money, and then it closes, and they're happy. That's not a client, right? That is just a transaction. A client is, the person who will call me and says, hey, Franz, I need a title search. Like, can you pull this deed for me? Or, Franz, my friend has like this thing on their mortgage they don't know. Can you maybe give me somebody who can look this over? A client is somebody that you've actually developed a relationship with, who trusts you and who trusts your judgment, and who's able to sort of come to you when they need things. And really, as a sort of both as an attorney and also as a broker, my goal is for people to come to me when they need things. I don't care what they need. I just want them to come to me first. And there's a very good chance that I will be able to find them the person that they need to do whatever it is that they need. But the fact that they come to me first not only means they trust me, they like me and all of that, and they also think that I can find them somebody. It also means that when they actually need something that I can do it. And that's business, and that makes me money, right? And that's great. So that's really something that I think we should impress on, new lawyers, junior lawyers, whatever, is this idea of like having a client and really having a client relationship and really being that person that is trusted and is the person that they pick up the phone and say, Franz, I have, or not Franz, they say, insert whatever your name is here, I have this problem, please help me fix it.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I'm sure that requires a lot of time and effort to build that community around you, who then identifies you as their go-to person whenever they have a legal issue. And I think it's something you touched upon very, very well, because even if you can't solve the problem, but you are the person to tell them who can solve the problem, and there is some form of trust in that relationship, right? Like they know that you have their back, that you will not take on a job just because, and you will direct them to the right person. Nancy, what do you think are some of the good billing practices as for someone who's, as a young attorney, who wants to start their own solo practice? What is something they should keep in mind?
I'm only laughing because you would ask me about my one weakness. I'm terrible. I'm really terrible at billing. I was going to start out by saying that I thought it was interesting when Jonathan said his goal is to win. I'm very analytical. My goal is to solve a problem, just like what Franz was saying. So the easiest thing for me in relation to billing as well is I have to decide when someone comes to me whether I'm the person to take the case. On the other side of the table is they have to decide whether they want to hire me. So a number of years ago, I came up with a flat fee consultation. And now with payment options and various things online, this has actually worked for me really well, which is I charge for 1 hour's work, regardless of how long the consultation takes. It could take 4 hours. It could take a whole day. Try to discourage that, but it happens. And basically, I review documents. I basically try to figure out what direction this potential client needs to take. And I have the option of saying, I'm not the person for you. Maybe I can refer you to someone else. And they have the option of saying, well, we don't like the way you did this. We don't want to hire you, which is fine with me. At this point, I want clients that I can work with, that I can have a relationship with. I'm not doing this for a 1 hour fee because I want to make that 1 hour of money. I don't mind getting paid, but there you go. I do find, by the way, to segue into the question you actually asked me, is that I think it's called the curve of gratitude. You can correct me. You have to work out a way to make sure you get paid. Otherwise, as things drag on, especially if you're in litigation, you end up in a case you can't get out of, and you don't want to be there. So you need to set up a process, and there are lots of online programs. There are lots of programs that are available to you to do your billing on a regular basis. I've waited too long to bill on occasion. It has gotten me into some trouble on occasion. I always tell people, well, it's an interest-free loan because I haven't billed you for a while. So, and then they get a big bill and they're like, well, how could it be that expensive? You don't want to go there. Learn from my pain. So yeah, regular billing is very important. My brother was a criminal defense attorney, and one time we were partners. And I learned from his mistakes. I should have learned better, but When the client hires you as a criminal defense attorney, if you don't get paid up front, you probably won't get paid, because the problem is if they win the case, they didn't need you. And if they lose the case, you were a terrible attorney. So, I mean, that's the bottom line. You need to work out a program that works for you. And what I find is, regardless of whether you're a slow biller or an underbiller or an overbiller, as long as you keep the line of communication open with the client, they know you're working on their matter, you're not ignoring them. The rest of it kind of works itself out.
Yeah, those are some great insights, Nancy. Clear client communication is so important, and I think we all in our practice do face conflicts with clients over bills, over work done, work product. So those are some great insights. Ashley, do you want to talk about any conflict that you encountered with the client and over billing or work product and how you handled it?
Oh yeah, so personal story on that. Yeah, I was gonna say I have some other things too.
Or any other experience or insights.
Yeah, I can tell you. Yeah, because these are things people want to hear, is the real true life stories. But yeah, I think in 6 years of being solo, I have only had to refund fees to clients twice. And that was because, one, I took a crazy client on that I shouldn't have taken on and should have trusted my gut feeling in the beginning. And two, it was just more trouble to try to deal with them and get them to pay than it would have been to just walk away and move forward. So you will have those experiences in your practice, and that will happen, especially as a new attorney, not knowing what good clients are and what you want, who you want. You want to take everything that comes in the door because you're trying to make money. But trust that gut feeling, because that will end up biting you in the ass later down the road. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have sworn.
But I think that's the best way to put it, right? Just so you know. But no, that's definitely great advice. As a young attorney, because you're so hungry for work and you're so hungry to leave a mark, that you do take on clients and work that perhaps you do not either, you don't resonate with, or it's a very difficult client, and you would not even have an interaction with such a person if it were not for this relationship. So that's definitely great insights. Jonathan, when we talk about young attorneys, and a lot of young attorneys do join existing practices, and I'm sure in your practice too, you do work with younger lawyers. What motivates you to take on work with a young attorney, and do you end up establishing a mentorship relationship, or how do you pass on the insights that you have?
Yeah, I think as a lawyer, to me, there are only really a couple of legacies that you get, maybe three. One of them is the legacy of helping your clients and the benefits you provide to them. Another one is doing pro bono work and joining volunteer organizations and helping the community. And the third one is mentoring younger or more junior lawyers to help them with their career. Law has a very long history of apprenticeship. I actually knew a lawyer 30 years ago when I started practicing who was a legal secretary who didn't go to law school and actually took the bar based on the apprenticeship rule. In law, a lot of people, they graduate from law school, they hang up a shingle, they don't necessarily go to a law firm initially. And those people really need the mentorship of more senior lawyers to help them through. And even if you go to a law firm, it's important to make a connection with at least one or two lawyers at that firm who can mentor you when you're junior. It took me at least 2 or 3 years to really feel like I had a handle on an entire litigation from beginning to end, that I knew what was going to happen through trial. And until then, it was kind of a mystery for me, as I recall. I'd done certain things, and there were certain things I'd never done. I hadn't experienced a jury trial. Those aren't that common in my practice. And you kind of worry about what happens. Am I going to be sandbagged by some more experienced lawyer who knows more than I do about some of these issues? And someone to be a mentor and help you through that, help reduce your stress about what you don't know is really important. And also to help you as a lawyer sort of understand what it's like to develop business, why you should be doing pro bono work to really facilitate your own fulfillment and career. Those things are important.
That's actually very true about what you said about, law having a history of apprenticeship and, bringing younger talent to understand the work that's been done, but also giving room to them to offer, their creativity to the profession and adapt it to who they are. So it's definitely it's definitely an exercise of bridging this gap, and I think mentorship is a great tool to facilitate that. I just want to go back to Ashley. I think she definitely wants to add some more inputs to good billing practices, which I think is a very relevant topic. Ashley.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say a few things because I just feel like this is such an important topic for newer attorneys, especially ones that are solo or planning to go solo. But following up on what Nancy was saying, so I do something a little bit different in my practice. So I've always been offering free consultation calls to clients for up to 30 minutes. And I've done that since day one of my practice. And yes, it takes a lot of time out of my day. And yes, it is a lot of unbillable time, but I can't tell you how much that has really made clients trust me more, for one, and helped me end up getting clients because I did spend that time talking to them without charging them, because a lot of them, expect that a lawyer is going to want to get paid the second you talk to them and is going to bill them for every second. So that has been one thing that I know I've had a lot of debates with other attorneys that are all levels of experience on this. And I know there's kind of a split idea of thought on it. So most people charge for their time for a consultation, others don't. Typically for me, it's like, I'd rather get to know what their issue is first and make sure it's something I can even handle before engaging them and giving them a retainer agreement and moving forward. So a lot of times that means I'm just going to be spending extra time on the phone with some people that won't end up being clients, but at least they can get some questions answered initially, which is they find to be very valuable. So that was one thing. And then two is also knowing your worth as an attorney and what you charge. I mean, as a new attorney, I was so conscientious about what I undervalued myself. I'll just put it that way. I mean, I started out billing clients at $200 to $225 an hour and thinking as a new attorney, that was the going rate. And since that time, I've pretty much doubled what I charge now. But, every year I've increased my fees by $25 or more. And, people never batted an eye. I thought that people would really be concerned about that. And if you know your worth and you say, this is what I charge, and the client says, okay, then they respect you more for that. And sometimes they want you more if you charge more too, or if you say you can take them on. So
Yeah,
we're all nodding, yes.
Yeah.
Have an open discussion with other attorneys about what they charge, what's the going rate for someone of your experience level. I also do flat fee versus hourly stuff, depending on the type of case. Most of my stuff is hourly. So yeah, and I use my case for client management and billing and stuff, which I find extremely awesome to use and very user-friendly.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because we definitely want to discuss how technology has changed the legal profession over, past so many years. And I think one of the challenges as an attorney who's been around for a very long time is, keeping pace with the changes and technological advancements in the profession. So Nancy, do you want to share some insights on how you've adapted to changing technology?
I didn't sign up for that question. No, that's okay. No, I have been through many billing programs. I have done everything from manually typing up the bill from my notes to entering. I had time slips at one point. Now I'm using a totally electronic program that I can have on all my different equipment. And I also use LawPay, which I really like, which allows me to do the flat fee consultations, because I used to, especially in the last year and a half when we haven't been meeting with people in person, how do you get paid before you do the flat fee consultation or your initial consult or whatever it is? Now, I know the younger people here are going to say, oh, that's just so normal, because that's what my daughter would say. I can actually ask them for my fee before I have to talk to them. And by the way, I agree with Ashley. I actually do have a free telephone consultation to see if I even want to do the flat fee consult. And I only do the flat fee consult if there are documents to review, because that is much more time intensive. So I have them send me the documents. I do not send out anything with my name on it. I don't do any outside work in terms of representing them for the flat fee. It seems to have worked out well. But in terms of, you know, I switched over to electronic storage, for example, years ago. I was one of the first people who knew what a flash drive was. I was like, I know that seems so silly now. Franz is probably laughing his head off. I basically, I have all my files on my computer, but I keep for every client a separate flash drive. That way, if I have projects I'm working on that I need to take with me, or I need to do a remote appearance, I have their files with me. And when I close a client file, many times I will take all the pertinent documents, put them on a flash drive, and give them to the client. That makes it much easier. One of the things we didn't talk about, but it is bringing things, you know, into the present, is the type of office space you need now, and that's a big issue now coming out of the pandemic as well. I've had a huge office with multiple conference rooms. I've had a single office. I've rented space from people, and what I did a few years ago is I decided to close down my massive office and I'd go to a company. I use Regis that has both virtual offices and rent by the hour offices. Because I do a lot of land planning, land use planning, easements, they require that I go to the property. And a lot of times my initial consultation will be at the property. So I found that I no longer really needed a physical office for the initial consult, the in-person prior to retainer consultation. So I picked Regis. Everybody has their own needs because I like to travel, and I travel internationally a lot, and they have offices all over the world. They're very economical. So in terms of passing through your costs, in terms of making decisions, in terms of what fits your practice, modernization, the things that are available electronically, like right now, make you anchor free. You don't have to have one physical location. So I'm sorry, I may have gone astray.
No, those are some great insights, Nancy. And thank you for touching upon the topic that how the kind of future we're looking at is a lower real estate footprint. Even though this is the real property law section, that's what it's panning out. People are adapting to more flexible workspaces or workspaces that are not in the traditional office setup. Definitely, and these are some of the few new modern tools that we get to integrate in the legal profession.
Speaking of which, we have some questions coming up on that after as well, or at least in the chat there seems to be. So we can go into it more at that time, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Franz, do you want to talk about some new modern tools that can be used for getting clients? For instance, have you used Avo or other platforms? And have you had any success in getting clients through those channels?
Well, I can talk about a couple of things. So, and I guess this will be more like slightly more like a marketing conversation as opposed to like a direct answer to your question.
No worries.
So I think one of the things that you have to do when you're running a business, any business, and running law is a business, I think you have to decide how you are actually going to market yourself and what exactly you are going to, and how you are going to use technology or marketing avenues to position yourself in whatever space you're in. So, you know, the specific question of Avo, you know, Avo is a really great space for demonstrating yourself as a competent attorney. So if you know, people ask questions on Avo, you can answer the questions on Avo. And as far as I know, it like increases your ranking on Avo as you answer more questions and people like the answers or whatever. And so that is a way of demonstrating you as being an extremely competent, responsive attorney. And then people might choose you for that reason. If that is not your goal, if your goal is not to kind of position yourself within the attorney market space attorney marketplace as sort of this extremely knowledgeable expert, which really that might not be your goal, and that's okay, because Everybody doesn't need a very knowledgeable expert. Sometimes people need, somebody who'll do things quickly, or sometimes people need somebody who's really inexpensive, or whatever the case might be. So you have to figure out what tools are available and how do they make you sort of, how do they fit in terms of your business model and how you want to market yourself, which I think is really important. Another thing to do is just like networking, speaking engagements, going to writing articles, all of those things, or being on boards. All of those things are ways where you can either demonstrate your competency or demonstrate yourself as being nice, or whatever your chosen marketing avenue is. And the other thing that I wanted to, there is a question in the chat that is actually related to technology, so I wanted to just kind of touch on that. Right. It looks like Brandon asked, what do you recommend for the current attorneys who just got licensed between 2019 and now, who had to deal with the effect of the pandemic and the lack of exposure to legal practice in the courts? And what I would say is this, which I did. I'm not really a litigator now. I don't really go to court. I don't do court-related stuff, but at one point I did. And one of the things that I would recommend is that you can just go to the court. It is so much easier now that we have virtual hearings. You can just go to the court from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to have your camera on. You can just be there and you can just listen to what's going on. When I did do sort of anything court related, one of the things that I did before I ever went in front of a judge or a commissioner was I sat through one of their calendars one day to see, who is this person? What is the judge like? What do they care about? What do they respond to? And all of that. And that is far more valuable in terms of being and I think Jonathan can probably speak to this, but I think he would agree with me that knowing your judge is just as important as knowing the law. When you're going to court, and certain judges respond to certain things, and you can be a better advocate for your client if you just take the time to go to court and just listen to one of the judges' calendars and listen to a lot of different judges' calendars. And that'll give you a good sense of the practice of law. What does it feel like to be in court? How do attorneys argue? How do attorneys make points? And what points land well and what points don't land well? And especially if you're doing anything jury related, if you're just observing attorneys, you can look for yourself. What did the attorney do that worked for you? And what did the attorney do that didn't work for you? And that's just experience that you get just kind of by going there and figuring it out. And it's so much easier to do now with technology. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. And it answers my question. You went beyond than just answering my question. I think that's a great tip. You can just log into the calendar of a judge and sit on a hearing to get to know the judge. That's the kind of advantage we previously did not have before the pandemic. But now that the systems are remote, it's so much easier to just get to hear your judge and see how they interact and listen and what are they looking for, right? And those are some great insights. Jonathan, we have a question.
Oh, if I could make a comment, Franz mentioned me, and I just wanted to make a quick comment, if I could, before we go on to another issue. And that is that when I was a junior lawyer, the best mentor I ever had looked at me one day and said, he said, the judge or the jury decides who they like better, and all you've got to do is give them a nail to hang their hat on. And that was excellent advice. And what it taught me is that when you go in front of a judge or a jury, your client is always the good guy. Not the bad guy who has law on his side or her side, but the good guy. And that's how you have to, every case, we focus on our client being the good guy and explaining why our client's the good guy.
That may especially be true if you're doing criminal defense, even though that's not what we do. Because that's one of the tactics that, that's why you always see, or you don't always, but you see a criminal defense attorney putting their arm around the shoulders of the defendant who has done some heinous crime. Yes, you want to make them out to be the good guy.
Yeah, and I apologize, Lakshi, for interrupting you. I'll be happy to answer.
I also wanted to bring up one other point. You have another friend in the courtroom, and that's the courtroom clerk. The clerks actually control the calendar, and making a friend of the clerk by not belittling them or slighting them in any way is a really good point, because they run the courtroom. So if you want to know how something works, when I was a new attorney, I went up to the clerk before I had my hearing, and I would ask the clerk how to do something or when it would be proper for me to do something. And, that really stood me well through the hearing because, sometimes you just don't know. There's no way to find out, except like Franz said, you can listen in on hearings, which is really good.
Right.
Some courtrooms
Absolutely.
do require you pay to even listen in. So you just need to make sure you signed up in whatever system you're going to be going on to. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
I talk too much. I'll let you go.
No,
on.
thank you for sharing that insight. That's great. You have to be best friends with a court clerk. But I definitely want to go and take up some questions from the audience. Thank you for answering one, Franz. So we have Sarah Johnson who wants to know, what advice would you give to a lawyer who left law after a few years of practicing in their 20s for a career in banking and has just recently pivoted and passed the bar and wants to go back into law in her mid-40s? How best to reboot? Any takers for this question?
Yeah, I'll take that one just briefly.
Okay.
I think what Sarah has to decide is whether or not she wants her law practice to be related to her experience in banking. Because if she does like the industry, law is part of almost everything we do. So she can use her previous contacts in banking to reach out to people or banks or insurance company that represent banks and can go to various group meetings and networking groups that have to do with banking. If Sarah wants to leave that area and not do banking, which may be why she went back to law school, then she has to join some other networking groups, I think, and make some decisions as to what direction she wants to take and make a new network. Anyway, that's where I would start.
That sounds great. But I'm just going to keep rolling with the questions so we can get to as many as we can. Next one is, how can I be an asset to my employer as a new attorney and new in the real estate field? Is there anything you wish you did differently or knew when you started? Any takers, or can I ask Ashley to do it?
Yeah, let's see, anything I wish I did differently.
I can repeat the question if that's...
yeah, I pulled it up. Sorry, I got it right here. Okay. I would say to be an asset to the employer, ask a lot of questions. If you're not sure what you're doing or you think you're going in the wrong direction, it's better to ask the questions up front than to spin your wheels and do something wrong and then have to redo it again. Wish I knew that I did differently. I'm trying to think. I'll have to think about that one if you want to come back to me on what I wish I did differently from the beginning.
Yeah, totally okay. So Nancy, this question's directed at you, but anyone can take it, I believe. It's, do you encrypt client files on your flash drives for security?
I don't encrypt them specifically. A lot of the flash drives I use have encryption built into them. And sometimes my assistant does something, but I don't know what it is. I apologize. It's private. I mean, the files that I'm putting on there are individual PDF files. So I'm not sure. I'm not answering the question, but no, I don't do anything in particular personally.
One thing I wanted to say on the technology part on that specifically is that we as lawyers have ethical obligations to secure our client files. So I use a cloud-based storage called Carbonite, and it's also a backup software as well. So I highly recommend you look into some of those options because there's quite a few of them out there, and having a constant backup of your computer files is extremely important. I know several attorneys that have been practicing longer than Jonathan and Nancy who have never heard of that and have never used that, and then their computer fails and they lose everything. So that's extremely important. And also we have an obligation to keep hackers away from taking our clients' data. So one thing, I guess that would be one thing that I wish I knew early on that I didn't do as a solo attorney, was getting an IT guy to come out and look and make sure I have a secure VPN, a secure network. My Wi-Fi is, just for my office and not for any other shared office attorneys. Having, the backup software, like I said. So those kinds of things are all going to be extremely important. And I also put a clause in my retainer agreement that specifically calls out to clients that I use cloud-based backups. And while those are as secure as I can possibly make them, they're not foolproof. So having some sort of a disclaimer in your retainer agreement is an awesome idea. And I'm happy to share some language with you if you want to email me.
And the State Bar has a form retainer agreement, which does include a cloud-based software provision for it if you want to use that. I use Box.com. It's encrypted in transit, it's encrypted at rest, and it's HIPAA certified. So, I feel comfortable with that, but I think everybody has to find their own comfort level in protecting their data in a world where hackers can access US government data and big bank data. People who can protect themselves better than anybody. We all have to understand that anything in the cloud is at risk and find a comfort level.
Yeah. Thank you for answering that question. The last question in a chat we have is from Lena Volkova. What are the pros and cons of big law firm versus being a solo practitioner? For those attorneys who left big firms, why? Pros and cons of both. Thanks, Lena. Anyone wants to take this?
I'll start that off if that's okay, Sonakshi.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never actually practiced in a big law firm. I did interview with a lot, several. I had 6 interviews with one large law firm in Santa Monica when I first got out of law school. And there were a number of reasons. Well, I didn't get the job because I had just done a mock trial on employment rights and questions that they could ask employees. And when I did the final interview in front of the #1 partner, he said to me, "Do you plan on getting married and having children?" And I couldn't answer that question without turning white. And I just was like, this is not going to be the place for me. And that goes to what your goals are. Okay. When you go to a big firm, a lot of times you'll make more money up front and you don't have to worry about getting the clients in the door. But you have to balance that against all of the pressure and the hours you're going to have to put in up front, because you don't get the big dollars for just sitting there and looking good. You're going to be putting in a lot of hours. And so there has to be some work-life balance. And you have to decide how to create that for yourself. I had someone working for me as a clerk some 30 years ago. And I was paying her a good salary, but I only had her working for me part-time. And she decided, even though she had promised me when I hired her that she would stay with me at least a year because I was training her, she decided to go off to a big firm. And she wrote me a little note telling me how much she was making. And when I sat down and figured it out by the hour, I was actually paying her more money. These are all things you need to consider. Okay. If a guaranteed salary and the ability to buy a house is what you want, and that's what you're going to get out of it, fine. Just realize you're going to probably sacrifice in terms of personal time and other things at the other end. And maybe some of this is wisdom of age. I don't know what you want to call it, but there are a lot of decisions you have to make when you're deciding whether or not you want to go out and be solo. You're your own boss. You get to make your own decisions. You get to take whatever clients you want. But on the other hand, you may be hungry and not have clients. So I'll turn it over to someone else. I'll get off my soapbox.
I definitely, those are some great insights, Nancy. I know Jonathan has had a few moves from medium firms to big law and then back to medium and solo. Jonathan, anything you want to share?
Sure. Well, I did work for a big international law firm for 3 years. Big firms are great for some people. I don't want to denigrate working in a big firm. In some respects, it was a great experience for me, and in some respects, it wasn't. But big firms will take very good care of you, but you do have to provide big firms with what they want, which are lots of billable hours. And, while I was at the big firm, I probably averaged 2,600 billable hours a year. I worked most weekends. I worked when the partner I worked for wanted me to work with him on the weekend. And that's just the way it is. But I also carried a firm credit card. Nobody complained if I went to dinner, to put it on the firm card because I was billing hours at the time. And, it was just, they've got great benefits. And you can build great relationships. And in some respects, when you're working in a big firm is just an amalgamation of smaller firms. You work in a certain department or with a certain group, and that can be really great if you get along with everybody well and if you work well together, or it can be really horrible if you don't. So big firms are not a single thing. They are an amalgamation of different things. And if you can find the right place, you can have a great experience there and a great future. And for some people, they want to spend more time with their kids, or they want to have outside activities that they maybe couldn't do if they're billing so many hours, and it maybe isn't the right thing for them. Or they like developing clients, and it's not as easy to do in a big firm, both because of conflicts and also available time to develop clients.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. We do have more questions coming in, and I just want the audience to know that we are pressed for time and we won't be able to take all of them, but you do have the email addresses of all our speakers in the chat. So please feel free to reach out to any speaker. And if you have any specific questions, please, they are more than happy to answer your questions. And thank you to all the speakers for participating in this panel discussion and sharing your experiences in a very candid conversation. Before we sign off, I think we let Jonathan talk about the real property law section and the work that we're doing in real property law section.
Yes, thank you, Sonakshi. So I am currently the vice chair of the section. Next year, I'll be the chair. Everybody who's speaking today is a member of the executive committee of the real property law section. Our mandate is to provide education and community to real estate lawyers across the state. And we do that in a number of ways. It's all first volunteer. We all volunteer our time to it. This is part of the way we give back, and that we do some pro bono benefit for the legal community. We have a journal, the California Real Property Journal, and people can write articles, and we need editors for that journal. We have an e-news that goes out every month, and we've got excellent members who do interviews, and hopefully if you're a member of the section, you get the e-news and you read it and you learn about what's going on and about the people who are involved. And we need people to write shorter articles for the e-news about really current legal issues that are in the news and in the community. We have practice area groups, and they take a practice area within something you're interested in within the real property law area, and they help to develop webinars that we put on, like this webinar. We also have webinars that people can apply to provide. Nancy's on that committee and looks at those, and we try to find every way we can to help educate members of the real property law world on how they can be more knowledgeable and how they can give back to their community. So thank you, Sonakshi, for doing this today. We greatly appreciate the effort you went to putting it together, and we hope everybody enjoyed it.
If I might just, I'm sorry to interrupt, just we don't have much time. I just wanted to refer the people who are attending to the CLA website. Real property law is just one of the sections through CLA. And if you join the real property law section, you're also a member of CLA. And there are a lot of free benefits that you can get through that membership. You can search for them online. Some of them have to do with free legal research, for example, which is really great for younger lawyers trying to make their minds up. Also, a lot of the items that Jonathan was referring to are also available through the sections tab on the CLA website. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to get that in the program.
No, thank you. Thank you for letting the audience know that. This was a wonderful session. And again, if you're interested in the work of Real Property Law section or participating in RPLS, please reach out to any one of the attorneys whose email addresses are in the chat. If you have any questions, please reach out as well. Thank you for being with us today. This was an amazing session. All right.
Thanks all.